scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Good rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And I'm Ethan, and we're coming at you again. We're back, and we're coming at you with some more appetizers. More appetizers. It seems like we almost have more appetizers than we do main course here lately. I guess you could say it's the off season, but I've been saying it pretty much every time there's a pay-per-view that comes up. For the UFC, that it just seems like it was a week ago that we had one, but I guess it's been 3 weeks and we're having another one. So on this podcast, we're going to have UFC 287 Pereira versus Adesanya 2, and that's going to be held. I think that would be that's April 8th, 2023, which is a Saturday coming up. And that's Miami, Florida, United States, at the Miami Dade Arena. And I'm pretty sure that's 10 Eastern, 9 Central time. So it's on a regular time, unlike the last card pay-per-view that was in England or London. So. But before I get into this, too far into this, I want to give out some shout outs, just a couple shout outs to some subscribers, new subscribers that I had over the last month or so. I've had a couple subscribers, maybe 5, 10, but I mentioned that a lot of times when if they don't have a username or a channel themselves, their name won't pop up. So I just got a couple here. So I want to shout out Kdro850. I appreciate you subscribing. I really do. Any little bit of help and subscribers or comments or likes, I really appreciate that. And then my guy, Christian Smith. This is a guy I've known for a long time. He was just, I think he maybe subscribed and gave some words of encouragement in the comment section. I appreciate that, buddy. I hope you're doing well. But those are the couple shout outs that I wanted to get through with first. And if you, I really appreciate it for people that subscribe, like, comment, any kind of interaction with the fans, or people that like my channel. I appreciate it, So if you do that, and you got a channel, I can identify you, I'll give you a shout out, because I appreciate that. I want you guys to know that I see that stuff and I appreciate it. But anyways, let's get into this card right now. Again, it's UFC 287 Pereira versus Adesanya 2, and really it should be called 4, because this is going to be the 4th time Adesanya has fought Pereira twice already in kickboxing, and then obviously he got knocked out in the first bout that they had in MMA. But yeah, I think that's kind of funny. There should be like an asterisk or something by the title of that, because they fought 3 times already. But anyways, let's get into this onto this main card first here. The main 5 fights here. So can I get a menu? And so the first fight on this bout is some young guns here. These are some young guys here. It's a bantamweight bout between Raul Rosa Jr. and Christian Rodriguez. And why I say that it's some young guys and some young guns is because Raul Rosa Jr. is only 18 years old, was wild. That's wild to me. Born in on October 8th, 2004. Like that's crazy. He's like a little kid. I wouldn't call him a little kid to his face, but I mean, he, he's literally a little kid. He's a child, honestly. And his first fight in uh, in the UFC was against Mando Gutierrez. It was a unanimous decision, and that was a Dana White Contender Series 55. But that was September 20th, 2022. So he was 17 years old when he had his first, I guess, quote unquote, fight in the UFC. So that's wild. And then he's had another one since then against Jay Pereira, which was a submission uh, rear naked choke at UFC 282, and that was December 10th, 2022. So it wasn't long since he turned 18 there. So that's just wild. And then his opponent that he's facing is Christian Rodriguez, C Rod, and he's young as well. Not quite as young, but he's only 25. December 17th, 1997. So that's why I mentioned the young guns, and this should be a really interesting fight, honestly, because like I said, they're both young, up and coming fighters, especially Raul Rosa, being that he's Rosa Jr., being that he's as young as he is, and they're fighting at 135. I'd be very surprised if farther down in his career that Raul Rosa doesn't have to move up in weight, because as you get older and you peak at 25, 30, I imagine he'll gain a lot more muscle, and heck, there's been cases of some men and people that grow still in height until they're like 21. So hell, he may gain a couple inches on his 5'9" frame. But anyways, get in kind of to the picks of these guys. Like, see, Christian Rodriguez, he has 8 wins and 1 loss, and 3 of the wins come by KO, TKO, and 4 of the wins come by submission and 1 by decision. And his 1 loss was by decision. And it shows that he's got a little bit better, well-rounded skills, because he can knock you out, he can submit you. But when it comes down to it, it almost hard for me not to go and pick Raul Rosa, just because it's such a good story, because he's such a young fighter and been so impressive in his fights too, because he has 7 fights with 7 wins, so he's undefeated. So they're close to both being undefeated. But in those 7 fights, he has 1 knockout, 5 submissions, and 1 decision. And I'm pretty sure I saw the fight against Jay Pereira when he got the submission by rear naked choke, and that was 2:44 of the first round, and that was a performance of the night. I remember that, and that was impressive. That was just completely dominant. So picking both these guys, they're both young, have a lot of talent, potential. Especially I keep going back to his age, but I mean, hell, he could fight another 20 years if he's good. So I think I'm going to go with Raul. Raul Rosa Jr. in this, and shows that he's got quite a few submissions. Majority of his fights have come by submission. So I'm going to go with Raul Rosa Jr. to submit Christian Rodriguez for the first time in his career. So that's the first bout that I have. My first pick for the UFC 287 Pereira versus Adesanya 2 prediction show. Okay, on to the second fight on this card. It's a fight between Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio, and both of these guys are very similar in the way that they fight. They're both like stand up, prefer the stand up, and have had a lot of knockouts in their career. And let's see, uh, Kevin Holland has 33 fights, 23 wins, 9 losses, and in those 23 wins, 13 of them come by way of knockout, and 6 by submission, and 4 by decision. And then in his losses, shows that he's got a good chin, because even in his 9 losses, he's only been knocked out once, and 3 were by decision and 5 by decision, and he does have 1 no contest. But in his last couple fights, he's struggled a little bit, you could say. Oh, I see. So in his last 6 fights, he's 2, 3, and 1, and the one being the no contest against Kyle Dakasis, which was an accidental clash of heads, knocked Holland unconscious. I think I remember that actually. And then in his last 2 fights, he's lost, has losses in his last 2 fights. One being, once again, the first knockout TKO in his career was his last fight against Stephen Thompson, which was a corner stoppage, actually, not a straight up corner stoppage. So he must have been taking a beating at the by the end of the 4th round. His corner had seen enough, and then the fight before that, the loss that came before that was against Hazmat Jemaya, which was that was like a last second fill in that he did. So a lot of respect that he filled in at the last second to take that fight at a catch weight of 180, and that was at UFC 279, and that was December 10th, 2022, and he lost that by submission by Darce choke. So kind of want to say that he's been on a bit of a rough streak, you could say, but he's also fought some straight up killers in Stephen Thompson, who's fought for the belt multiple times, Hazmat Jemaya, who's probably one of the hottest up and comers, and was showing that he is mostly a stand up fighter, knockout artist with his 13 wins. I mean, you pretty much knew he was going to get dominated by Hazmat Jemaya. That was just a straight up mismatch. But he shows that he can get submissions too, because he has 6 of them. But on to Santiago Ponzinibbio. He has a very similar win-loss record, and his the run that he's been on has been pretty similar. So he has 35 fights with 29 wins and 6 losses, and in those 29 wins, he has 16 knockouts. Most of his fights come by way of knockouts, and also just the same as Kevin Holland, he also has 6 submissions, wins, and 7 by decision. And then in his 6 losses, he's been knocked out 3 times. He's got a little bit of a history of being knocked out. No losses by submission and 3 wins by decision. And in his last 6 fights, he's had a little rough go as well. He's only 3-3 in his last 6 fights. But in those 3 losses, 2 of them came by split decision, and the farthest one back was against Li Jungling, where he got knocked out at 4:25 in the first round, and that was a while back. That was a little more than 2 years ago. That was January 16th, 2021. But man, this is a very even matchup between these two. Looking at the age here, Santiago Ponzinibbio is 26. I think Kevin Holland's only 30. Uh, but uh, be I would like to see what happens in this fight if it turns into a stand-up fight, if one starts getting better of the other, if one of them decides to try to take it down to get in it, to see if they have an advantage there. But that's what I figure this fight will be. It will be a stand-up war until maybe one of them decides that they're not uh, faring very well in those exchanges. And I think I'm going to pick Kevin Holland to win this one, and I'm going to say he's going to win this actually by knockout because Santiago Ponzinibbio. I know it's only been 3 times, but he has been knocked out before, and there's going to be potential for someone to get knocked out in this fight. So in the welterweight bout between Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio, I'm picking Kevin Holland to get the win by knockout. All right, on to the third fight of the night is another bantamweight fight between Rob Font and Andre Yanez. And like pretty much all these fights have fighters that are pretty comparable, you know. So Rob Font, he in his 25. He's had 25 fights with 19 wins, 6 losses, 8 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 7 by decision. And in his 6 losses, he's lost 1 by submission and 5 by decision, and zero losses, zero by knockout. And in his last 6 fights, similar to Kevin Holland and Santiago Ponzinibbio, in his last 6 fights. In his last 6 fights, he's actually 4-2, so a little bit better, but he lost his last 2 fights. But once again, you got to look at who he lost to, and both of them were just by decision, but they're straight up killers. The guys that he lost to Marlon Vera, who I wouldn't be surprised at some point fights for the championship, and that was April 30th, 2022, and then the loss before that was against, the legend Jose Aldo, and that was December 4th, 2021. But with this 8 wins by knockout and 4 by decision shows that he's a pretty balanced fighter. He can beat you in multiple ways, but for the most part, I would say he's a stand-up fighter. He's a striker. And then Andre Yanez is actually on a bit of a winning streak, so a little bit of difference just in records here. He's on a 9-fight winning streak, and it's a 6-fight winning streak in the UFC, I believe. Yeah, he's 6-0 in the UFC, but a total a 9-fight winning streak, and he's had 19 fights with 16 wins and 3 losses. In those 16 wins, he has 10 by knockout, 2 by decision, and 2 by submission, and 4 by decision. And in the 3 losses, all of them have come by decision, just by decision. So he's shown that he's durable. He's not going to get submitted easily or knocked out easily. And let's see here. 5 of his 6 wins in the UFC have come by TKO or knockout. So I think this is kind of making an easy prediction for me. So in the bantamweight bout between Rob Font versus Andre Yanez, I think I'm going with Andre Yanez, and I think I'm going to pick him to get his let's see, it'll be his 6th knockout in the UFC and 7th straight win. So that's who I'm going for. I'm getting a knockout in that think Andre Yanez is going to knock Rob Font out. All right, on to the co-main event, the welterweight matchup fight between Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal. And I almost look at this a little bit as a mismatch, I, I, but I won't say just yet. I feel as if one of these fighters doesn't really even have a chance in this fight. But anyways, Gilbert Burns, in his 26 fights, he has 21 wins and only 5 losses. In those 21 wins, he has 6 by knockout, 9 by submission, and 6 by decision. And in the 2 losses, he has been knocked out twice, never been submitted, and 3 by decision. Let's see, in his last 6 fights, he is 4-2 in his last 6 fights. And the 2 people that he lost, the 2 losses came against, once again, one of the hottest up and comers, probably just a fight away from a title fight, is Hazmat Chimaev, which he lost just by decision. And back on February 13th, 2021 at UFC 258, he lost to a long time reigning, really boasted about champion that no one thought we could see lose until Leon Edwards beat him in Kamaru Usman, where he got knocked out TKO punches. So I mean, the losses that he has are against, once again, they're just straight up killers. So I don't take too much from losing to guys that could easily have the belt at the welterweight weight class. And then Jorge Masvidal, similar. You could say the same thing about him, but he hasn't. It's been a while since he's won a fight. But in his 51 matches, he's been in a lot of fights. So you could say he's maybe got a lot of wear and tear on his body. He has 35 wins, 16 losses, with 16 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, and 17 by decision. And then in the 16 losses, he has 2 by knockout, 2 by decision, and 12 by decision. Just a bunch of decision wins or losses on his career. And in his last 6 fights, he's 3-3, but he's lost his last 3 fights. But I mean, it's a similar story to Gilbert Burns. With it's the guy you got it's context. There's context there against the guys he's losing to. So in the loss at UFC 272, he lost in a unanimous decision fight to Colby Covington, and then at UFC 261, he got knocked out by Kamaru Usman, and then at UFC 251, 10 cards back, he lost to Kamaru Usman. That was the first time he fought Kamaru Usman, and he lost by decision, unanimous. But I just have, I kind of like George Masvidal there a little bit, until obviously he had this 3-fight losing streak. It kind of showed that maybe he's not as great as everyone thought he was, beating guys like Ben Askren and beating on beating on Nate Diaz until every bit of scar tissue on his face was opened up and there had to be a doctor stoppage. But I fell out of fan favor for him, kind of hearing his law breaking activities, I guess, some of the actions out of the cage, out of the ring behavior that he had, with, like, I guess Colby Covington got so under his skin that he felt the need to try to jump him and stuff, and jumped him and hit him and chipped his tooth. That's the thing that'd make me the maddest. If someone jumped me or beat on me, chipping my teeth. So then I have to have fillings or something for my chipped teeth. That stuff's permanent. That's permanent damage that he did to Colby Covington. And I'm surprised. I'm sure it's still maybe in the works, but I'm surprised no legal charges really came down on him for that. And then I'm just going on and on about why I don't really care for Jorge Masvidal, but I'll go to the kind of the nail in the coffin here, just because he's been in so many fights. So he's got a lot of wear and tear on his body. He's lost his last 3 fights, and he's not much of a ground fighter at all. Only 2 submissions in his career, but I guess he's good at defending on the ground as well, because he only has 2 losses by submission. But the kind of the nail in the coffin for why I don't care for him too much is his age. His age. He's 38 years old and was born on November 12th, 1984. So he'll be 39 years old this year, to go along with all the wear and tear, all the fights he's been in, and losing his last 3. And like I said, he doesn't have a great ground game either. Like his best asset and attribute to his ground game is being able to stuff the takedown, or be able to get back up once he's been taken down. But Gilbert Burns is a different beast. Like he's right up there, with Kamaru Usman and Hazmat Chimaev, the only guys that have beaten him recently. But he's also, I guess he's not much younger. He's 36, but maybe hasn't had as much wear and tear on his body due to not seeing how he hasn't been in 51 fights. But he was born July 20th, 1986, so he'll be 37 this year. So it's not like he's a lot younger, but this is more maybe just who I like. But I also believe this will be who wins as well. So in the welterweight bout between Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, I'm going with Gilbert Burns because I know that he has such a better ground game, and over the last couple of years he's improved in his striking as well, just with the fact that he has 9 wins by submission, but he can knock you out as well with the 6 knockouts that he has. So if things start going a little hectic with the stand up and the striking for Gilbert Burns, I see him taking Jorge Masvidal down and probably dominating him there. So in the welterweight bout between Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, I got Gilbert Burns to win. And I think both these guys show that they're pretty tough. They don't get knocked out a lot. They don't get submitted a lot. So I think I'll just go with Gilbert Burns to win this by unanimous decision. All right. On to the main event. This is a middleweight championship bout between the champion Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya, who's the former champion, longtime former champion, and that they have a long history. They've already fought 3 times, twice in K1 kickboxing, been knocked out. Israel Adesanya has been knocked out by him in kickboxing with head kicks, and then the fight back on November 12th, 2022. It looked like Israel Adesanya was maybe going to win the fight unanimously, probably 4-1 unanimous decision, because he was pretty much controlling the whole fight. I wouldn't say he is dominating the whole fight, but he was definitely controlling the whole fight against Alex Pereira. It looked like he was on his way to win that that fight, finally get some revenge and his day to reconcile his previous losses. It looked like it was on the way, and then he just got sloppy at 2 minutes and 1 second of the fifth round, and kind of got into a bit of uh, a scramble and striking situation that wasn't very under control, and he got knocked out by TKO punches. Got into a bit of a flurry that was unnecessary that late in the fight, and got knocked out and lost his belt to Alex Pereira. But Alex Pereira doesn't have a long history of being a mixed martial artist. He only has 8 fights, seven wins and 1 loss. So he hasn't been in a lot of fights. So that's why it was a little bit. It was really. I wouldn't say it was surprising that he won against. He beat Israel Januzaj for the belt, but it was just. It was crazy because he hadn't been in that many fights and already fighting for the belt and wins it just like that. Hasn't been in the UFC, hasn't been fighting mixed martial arts for very long. He is on a 7-fight win streak. His first fight was the one that he lost by rear naked choke, but you can look on just about any fighter's history and see that they've lost at least once by rear naked choke. It's pretty common. But he has just 4 fights in the UFC. Only had 3 before he fought for the belt, but just in his last 4 fights or so, 3 of the 4 have come by knockout or TKO. So this is a very I'm excited to see this rematch, this fight, honestly. And then on to Israel Januzaj. It's I find it hard to believe that there's not something in the back of his mind about just not being able to beat this basically his boogeyman. He can't beat him. He has his number like no other. It's just a wild thing to think that he's fighting a guy for the 4th time that he's already lost to 3 times. It's just a crazy scenario. That kind of stuff doesn't happen very often. But Israel Januzaj, he has an impressive record besides his history with Alex Pereira, obviously. In his 25 fights, he has 23 wins, 15 by knockout, only 8 by decision, no submissions, and the 2 losses, 1 knockout, which we know who that was by, and then 1 decision, which I don't put a lot of stock into. That loss was against Jan Blachowicz because he moved up in weight. He went to what, 205 to fight him, and Jan Blachowicz just basically bullied him, used his weight and took him down and pretty much just held him there. But in his last 3 fights, he's 4-2 with the 2 losses I stated, and he was just the champion. He was the champ. Won the belt, and then I guess he had to unify it. He won it and then unified it, and then he defended it. Defended it 5 times, 5 or 6 times if you want to include the unifying fight against Rob Whittaker as a defense. But man, this is a hard fight to pick, just because this is very similar to the Leon Edwards Kamaru Usman rematch, kind of, because Kamaru Usman, he was dominating that first fight. It looked like he was on his way to win that fight, and then he got a little sloppy, a little lazy, and then got his head kicked off in the first fight against Leon Edwards. And then of course they have the rematch, and it goes to, in my opinion, a razor thin I think that was a majority decision. So one of the judges did say it was a draw, but this is very similar as well. So they're having a rematch after it looked like Israel Adesanya was on his way to win by decision once again, or for the first time, win for the first time. But once again, he got sloppy, lazy, got got baited and goaded into a bit of a flurry that was unnecessary at that point in the fight, and then got knocked out. TKO punches, got slumped up against the cage. Uh, but now they're fighting again. So, I mean, you put your money on something, you maybe think that this is going to be a decision, majority decision fight again. But I think Alex Pereira just has Israel Adesanya's number. He like I said, he's his boogeyman. He's got his trump card, you know. So in this bout, middleweight bout, and then also before I get too ahead of myself, Alex Pereira, every time he fights, he's getting better because now he's constantly fighting strictly MMA, not 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 kickboxing, not K1, not Glory, none of that stuff. All just MMA. So he's getting better. With that every fight, and the more time he gets to train and made championship money, so he's probably got better nutrition and better coaches. So in the middleweight championship bout between the champion Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya, it's hard not to go for the four in a row, the quattro. So I'm going with Alex Pereira to win this, and because he's already knocked Israel Adesanya out, what, 2-3 times already? I think Alex Pereira is going to get the win by knockout and keep his belt. So I'm really excited about that fight. That should be a wild and a lot of storylines to that fight. But overall, the rest of the card, I don't think is like great. To really have a stacked card, it's got to be one that's got a couple championship fights, but it doesn't have that on it. And I think you've already heard me go over my disdain for Jorge Masvidal. But anyways, let's go back over these real quick. So in the first fight is a bantamweight bout between Raul Rosa Jr. versus Christian Rodriguez, and I'm going with Raul Rosa Jr. to win that and win it probably by submission. And then in the second fight is a welterweight bout between Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio, and I'm going with Kevin Holland to get the knockout here. And then in the third fight, we have a bantamweight bout between Rob Font versus Andre Yanez, and once again, I'm going for another knockout. I'm going with a lot of finishes on this card. Hopefully, I think some of the past couple cards didn't really have any finishes. They were all just a bunch of close decisions. Let's get some finishes. Let's get some knockouts, some submissions or something going on this card. And then with the co-main event, we have a welterweight bout between Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal, and I think Gilbert Burns is. Both of these guys have showed that they're tough and durable. So I think this fight's. I think Gilbert Burns is still gonna probably control the fight mostly on the ground. Maybe show a little bit of what he's got in the stand-up, but I'm going with Gilbert Burns to win this by decision, unanimous. And then the main event, the main event, not the co-main event, but the main event is a middleweight championship bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus Israel Adesanya, and I feel that Alex Pereira's got Israel Adesanya's number, like he's in the back of Adesanya's head. Like I feel Israel Adesanya could fight the best fight of his life, but with 1 second on the clock, he'll get knocked out. He'll get too overzealous and get knocked out just because that Pereira, he's in his head. So I'm going with Alex Pereira to win this fight by knockout. He's going to knock Israel Adesanya out again. So I hope this ends up being a good card for UFC. The UFC 287 Pereira versus Adesanya 2, which I said should be an asterisk there, should be 4, and this is the prediction show for that. But I hope it ends up being a good card, and I'm ready for it. I'm excited. So with that, I think that's all I have for you. And with that, can I get a check, please?